The Galactic Council chambers fell silent as Ambassador Carix entered the vast crystalline hall. His towering form moved with predatory grace, each step echoing through the space like distant thunder. Standing nearly 12 feet tall, his obsidian scales reflected the pale light of distant stars visible through the transparent dome overhead. The other delegates instinctively pressed themselves against their seats, ancient evolutionary fear coursing through their veins. Carix was a Nethys, a member of the most feared species in the known galaxy. For millions of years, his kind had been the apex predators of space, their ships striking terror into entire star systems. Their very presence meant death, destruction, and the end of civilizations. Yet here he stood wearing the ceremonial robes of diplomacy rather than the battle armor his ancestors had worn while conquering worlds. The change had begun 30 years ago when humanity first encountered the Nethys fleet near the Centauri system. Every species in the galaxy had warned the humans to flee, to hide, to do anything but engage with the legendary killers. Instead, the humans had done something unprecedented. They had offered food. Captain Sarah Chen had been commanding the human exploration vessel Discovery when the massive Nethys dreadnought had emerged from hyperspace. Her crew had expected death, but Chen had ordered the ship's entire food stores to be ejected in cargo pods toward the alien vessel. Along with the supplies, she had transmitted a simple message in mathematical sequences that roughly translated to, "We see you are far from home. We offer sustenance." The Nethys fleet had been engaged in a deep space patrol lasting several cycles, and their provisions had indeed run dangerously low. No species had ever offered assistance to the dreaded predators. Most fled in terror or prepared for hopeless battle. But these strange, soft creatures had recognized their need and offered help without being asked. Carix had been a young warrior on that ship, watching in amazement as his captain, the legendary Vorthak the Destroyer, had actually accepted the human gift. More shocking still, Vorthak had invited the human captain aboard their vessel. Sarah Chen had walked into the heart of the most dangerous ship in the galaxy, carrying nothing but a translator device and a bottle of something called whiskey. That meeting had changed everything. The humans showed no fear, only curiosity and genuine warmth. They asked questions about Nethys culture, shared stories of their own world, and treated the terrifying predators as simply another species worth knowing. When Captain Chen learned that the Nethys had been searching for a new homeworld after their son had begun dying, she had immediately contacted Earth's colonial administration. Within a year, the first Nethys settlements had been established on 3 human-designated worlds. The predators who had spent millennia conquering and destroying had found themselves welcomed as refugees and partners. Human engineers had worked alongside Nethys builders to create cities that accommodated both species. Human farmers had shared agricultural techniques that helped the Nethys grow food on their new worlds. The relationship had grown stronger over the decades. Nethys warriors had protected human colonies from pirates and hostile species. Their advanced weapons technology had been shared freely, while humans had provided medical advances that had extended Nethys lifespans by centuries. The 2 species had begun serving together on mixed crews, with Nethys protection allowing human explorers to venture into previously dangerous regions of space. Carix himself had spent 15 years serving aboard human vessels, learning their languages, customs, and ways of thinking. He had watched human doctors work desperately to save the life of a wounded Nethys child, never giving up even when their own medical texts said the case was hopeless. He had seen human engineers sacrifice their own sleep and comfort to repair Nethys ships damaged in battle. He had witnessed the strange human capacity for hope, for believing that any problem could be solved with enough effort and ingenuity. Now, as he approached the council podium, Carix could feel the fear and anger radiating from the assembled delegates. The Zephyrian representatives' tentacles writhed with barely controlled terror. The crystalline Valari were flickering between aggressive red and defensive blue hues. Even the normally composed Alterian elder was gripping his chair with white-knuckled intensity. The accusations had been building for months. The galaxy's major powers claimed that the alliance between humans and Nethys represented an existential threat to galactic peace. They argued that humans had corrupted the natural order by befriending the deadliest species in existence. Some whispered that the humans were secretly controlling the Nethys, using them as weapons against other species. The truth was simpler and more dangerous to the established order. Humans had treated the Nethys with basic dignity and respect. something no other species had ever considered. In return, the most feared warriors in the galaxy had become humanity's most loyal protectors and friends. The alliance represented something unprecedented, a partnership based on mutual benefit rather than fear or conquest. Distinguished delegates, Carrick began, his deep voice carrying easily through the chamber. I stand before you not as a representative of the Nethys alone, but as a voice for the bond that has grown between our species and humanity. He paused, allowing his words to settle before continuing. We are here because you fear what we have become together. The Zephyrian delegate's voice trembled as she spoke. Your kind has terrorized this galaxy for eons. Now you claim to be changed, but we see the truth. The humans have weaponized your violence. Your fleets grow stronger each day, and human colonies expand under your protection. Carrick's expression remained calm, but his words carried steel. We protect those who showed us kindness when they could have shown only fear. We defend those who offered friendship when they could have chosen hatred. If this threatens you, perhaps you should examine why. The chamber erupted in angry voices, but Carrick stood unmoved, his dark eyes scanning the crowd of frightened and furious aliens. He had come here seeking understanding, hoping that other species might learn from humanity's example. Instead, he found only the same old fears and prejudices that had kept the galaxy divided for millennia. Unknown to him, this would be his final diplomatic mission. The emergency session convened 3 days after Carrick's appearance before the council. Representatives from 47 major civilizations filled the chamber, their combined fleets positioned throughout the system as a show of force. At the center of it all sat High Arbitrator Zenth Ka, the ancient Volari, whose crystalline form had presided over galactic law for over 2 centuries. Admiral Marcus Webb sat in the human delegation section, his weathered face betraying no emotion despite the hostile atmosphere. Beside him, Commander Elena Vasquez kept her hand close to her sidearm, though both knew such weapons would be useless if this gathering turned violent. The humans were outnumbered 1,000 to 1, with only their reputation for unpredictability providing any protection. The evidence is irrefutable, announced Prosecutor Thale 7, the automated collective's representative. His mechanical voice echoed through the chamber as holographic displays materialized around him. In the past 30 years, human-controlled systems have expanded by 400%. Their population has grown exponentially across dozens of worlds. This expansion has been made possible only through Nethys military protection. The first hologram showed a star map, with human territories marked in blue and Nethys settlements in red. The 2 colors were thoroughly intermingled, creating a purple swath across an entire spiral arm of the galaxy. Previous territorial expansions by any species had taken centuries or millennia. The Human-Nethys Alliance had accomplished the same feat in mere decades. Moreover, Thales 7 continued, intelligence reports indicate that human scientists have been working to enhance Nethys biological capabilities. They have extended Nethys lifespans, improved their physical strength, and increased their reproductive rates. They are creating an army of super predators. Admiral Webb stood slowly, his movement drawing immediate attention from the chamber's security forces. May I respond to these accusations? High Arbitrator Zenth Ka's form flickered between yellow and green, indicating careful consideration. You may speak, human, but remember that you stand in a place of judgment. Thank you, Arbitrator. Webb's voice carried the confidence of a man who had faced down space pirates and stellar storms. The prosecutor speaks of expansion as if it were conquest. Every world humanity has settled was either uninhabited or offered freely by its previous occupants. We have displaced no one and destroyed nothing. He gestured to his own holographic display, showing detailed records of every human settlement. As for Nethys population growth, yes, we have helped our allies live longer and healthier lives. When we encountered them, they were a dying species. Their homeworld was destroyed, their numbers decimated. We offered them what any civilized species should offer, medical aid and sanctuary. The Alterian elder leaned forward, his 6 eyes focusing intently on Webb. But why the Nethys? Of all the species in the galaxy, why choose to aid the most dangerous? Your own records show that they had destroyed over 300 civilizations before your first contact. Webb's expression hardened. Because they needed help and we could provide it. Since when does a species past negate their right to survival and friendship? The Nethys we know today are not the same as their ancestors. They have chosen a different path. A path you have guided them down, hissed the serpentine representative, her forked tongue tasting the air nervously. Our intelligence networks report that human advisors are embedded in every major Nethys military unit. Your species has turned the galaxy's deadliest predators into your personal attack dogs. The accusation hung in the air like poison gas. Commander Vasquez felt her jaw clench as she recognized the careful manipulation of facts. Yes, humans served alongside Nethys forces, but as partners and friends, not controllers. The joint crews had been formed because both species fought better together than apart. Before Webb could respond, the chamber's attention shifted as a new figure entered through the primary portal. Carrick strode into the hall, but he was not alone. Behind him came Vorthak himself, the legendary destroyer whose very name had once sent entire civilizations fleeing to the far reaches of space. The ancient Nethys commander had aged in the 30 years since first encountering humanity, but he still commanded a presence that made the chamber's massive space feel cramped. Battle scars crisscrossed his obsidian hide, each one a testament to countless conflicts across the galaxy. His golden eyes swept across the assembled delegates with predatory intensity. I requested to address this assembly. Vorthak's voice rumbled like distant earthquakes. You speak of my people as if we are mindless beasts controlled by human masters. This insults both our species. High Arbitrator Zenthka's crystalline form shifted to deep purple, indicating extreme unease. Commander Vorthak, your presence here is unexpected. The charges before this council concern your species' alliance with humanity. Your testimony may be considered biased. Biased? Vorthak's laugh was like grinding stone. I have fought and killed representatives of every species in this chamber. I have conquered their worlds and scattered their fleets. Yet you call me biased for speaking in defense of the only species that ever showed my people mercy? He moved closer to the central podium, causing several delegates to scramble backward. Before humans found us, we were dying. Our sun had failed, our colonies were scattered, and our young were growing up as raiders and pirates because we had no other way to survive. We were becoming everything this galaxy feared we were. The holographic displays around him showed images from Nethys history, their dead homeworld, the refugee fleets wandering through space, the desperate raids on cargo vessels for basic supplies. Then Captain Sarah Chen offered us food, Vorthak continued, not because she feared us or sought to control us, but because she saw fellow beings in need. When we told her our story, she did not offer platitudes or empty sympathy. She gave us worlds to call home. The Zephyrian delegates' tentacles writhed with agitation. And in return you became their enforcers. Human territory has become impregnable because of your protection. They expand without consequence because everyone fears to oppose them. Vorthak's eyes fixed on the trembling delegate with predatory focus. We protect our friends just as they protect us. When the Corvin Syndicate attacked human medical stations, we responded. When pirates raided joint colonies, we hunted them down. This is what allies do for each other. But at what cost? The Alterian Elder's voice carried millennia of weariness. The balance of power that has maintained galactic peace for centuries is collapsing. Other species live in constant fear of this human-Nethys alliance. Wars are beginning as civilizations arm themselves against a threat they cannot hope to match. Admiral Webb stepped forward. Then perhaps those civilizations should consider alliance instead of opposition. Humanity has never hidden our intentions. We seek exploration, knowledge, and peaceful coexistence. Any species willing to work with us in good faith will find us ready partners. Under Nethys protection, snarled the serpentine representative, submit to human leadership or face their pet predators. The chamber erupted in angry voices as delegates shouted accusations and threats. Security forces moved to surround the human delegation, while Nethys warriors who had accompanied Carrick and Vorthak stepped protectively closer to their allies. High Arbitrator Zenthka's form blazed brilliant white, a signal for absolute silence. When the chamber quieted, his ancient voice carried the weight of galactic law. This alliance represents a clear threat to established order, he pronounced. The evidence shows unprecedented expansion, military buildup, and the weaponization of the galaxy's most dangerous species. Under Section 7 of the Galactic Concordat, this council finds sufficient cause to declare the human-Nethys alliance a threat to universal peace. The words hit like physical blows. Admiral Webb felt his heart sink as he realized the predetermined nature of these proceedings. Commander Vasquez's hand moved to her weapon, though she knew the gesture was futile. However, Zenthka continued, the Council recognizes that this alliance was formed through mutual choice rather than conquest. Therefore, we offer terms for resolution. The Nethys must choose. Dissolve their alliance with humanity and return to their traditional isolation, or face the combined response of the galaxy. Vorthak's roar shook the chamber. You ask us to abandon those who saved us? To betray the only species that ever showed us kindness? Never. Then you have made your choice, Zenthka replied with crystalline finality. This session is concluded. The execution platform floated in the void between stars, a massive construct of crystalline metal and energy fields designed for one purpose, the complete destruction of biological matter. 73 galactic fleets surrounded the platform in concentric spheres, their combined firepower capable of sterilizing entire solar systems. At the center of it all, 12 Nethys prisoners stood in quantum restraints that prevented any form of movement or resistance. Carix was among them, his proud head held high despite the energy bonds that kept him motionless. Beside him stood Vorthak, the ancient commander who had refused every offer of clemency in exchange for abandoning humanity. The other 10 were younger Nethys who had volunteered to share their leader's fate, rather than accept exile from their human friends. Captain Sarah, Chen watched from the bridge of the human dreadnought, defiance, tears streaming down her weathered face. The past 3 months had been a nightmare of failed negotiations, desperate rescue attempts, and ultimately, helpless acceptance of galactic law. The Council had been absolute in their demands. Execute the Nethys leaders who refused to dissolve the alliance, and scatter the remaining population to isolated worlds where they could never again threaten galactic peace. Captain, whispered Commander Torres from the tactical station, long-range sensors show the Alterian fleet powering up their planetary bombardment arrays. If we make any aggressive moves, I know, Chen replied, her voice thick with grief. Stand down all weapons. We won't give them an excuse to attack the civilian transports. Behind the military cordon, hundreds of human and Nethys civilian vessels waited under heavy escort. Families that had lived together for decades were being torn apart. Children who had grown up with friends from both species were being forced to say goodbye forever. The alliance that had brought peace and prosperity to an entire sector was being destroyed by fear and political manipulation. On the execution platform, High Arbitrator Zenthka materialized as a massive hologram, his crystalline form pulsing with official authority. His voice echoed through the void via quantum transmission, reaching every ship in the assembled fleet. Carix of the Nethys, Vorthak the Destroyer, and your companions, the ancient Valerian toned. You stand convicted of crimes against galactic peace. Your alliance with humanity represents an existential threat to the established order. Your refusal to dissolve this alliance leaves us no choice but to implement the harshest penalties of galactic law. Carix's voice came through his own quantum transmitter, carried across space to every listening ship. We are guilty only of loyalty to those who showed us mercy. If this is a crime in your eyes, then your justice is worthless. You were offered alternatives, Zenthka replied. Exile to the Outer Rim, isolation on designated worlds, even service to the Council as peacekeepers. You rejected every option that required abandoning your human allies. Because those were not truly options, Vorthak growled through the transmission. They were elaborate forms of betrayal. We would rather die as friends than live as traitors. The execution method had been chosen specifically for its finality. Quantum disintegration would not merely kill the prisoners, but would prevent any possibility of resurrection through cloning, consciousness transfer, or other technologies that had made death less permanent in recent centuries. It was the ultimate punishment, reserved for the most dangerous criminals in galactic history. Aboard the human medical vessel Sanctuary, Dr. Elena Vasquez worked frantically at her station. Over the past months, she had been secretly scanning every Nethys volunteer who visited the ship for medical checkups. Using advanced quantum resonance mapping, she had recorded their complete biological patterns down to the subatomic level. The work was illegal under galactic law and impossible according to current science, but Elena had never cared much for either limitation. The patterns are stored in the quantum matrix core, she whispered to her assistant, Dr. James Park. Encrypted in the ship's navigation system where no one would think to look. If anyone ever develops the technology to reconstruct from these patterns, that's a big if, Park replied grimly. And even if it becomes possible, it would take decades to develop the necessary equipment. Elena watched the execution platform through the view screen, her hands shaking with rage and sorrow. Then we better hope Carrick's was right about human ingenuity having no limits. The energy field around the platform began to intensify, reality itself rippling as quantum disruptors came online. The assembled fleets maintained their positions, weapons trained on any ship that might attempt a rescue. Several human vessels had already been destroyed for getting too close to the platform. Carrick's used his final moments to address the humans directly, his words transmitted across all frequencies. Sarah Chen, Admiral Webb, Dr. Vasquez, and all our human friends, do not mourn for us. We die knowing that your species showed the galaxy what true friendship means. Perhaps someday others will learn from your example. Forthak's ancient voice joined the transmission. To my fellow Nethys scattered among the stars, remember what we learned from humanity. Strength is not found in conquest but in protection. Honor is not won through fear but through loyalty. Live by these truths, even if we cannot. On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Chen activated her ship's main transmitter, broadcasting on all channels despite the Council's orders for human silence. Carrick's, Vorthak, and all brave Nethys who stand with you. Humanity will never forget your sacrifice. We will never stop believing that friendship is stronger than fear. High Arbitrator Zenthka's form blazed with final authority. By the power vested in this council by the Galactic Concordate, I hereby execute the sentence of quantum disintegration upon the convicted criminals. Let this serve as warning to any who would threaten the peace of civilized space. The disintegration field activated with a sound like reality tearing apart. Energy cascaded around the platform in impossible colors, quantum forces pulling matter apart at the most fundamental level. The 12 Nethys prisoners stood motionless in their restraints, their proud forms beginning to fade as their very atoms were unmade. For a moment that lasted an eternity, Carrick's eyes met Sarah Chen's across the vast distance between ships. In that gaze, she saw no fear or regret, only the steady resolve of a being who had chosen his path and accepted its consequences. Then the energy field reached maximum intensity, and the greatest allies humanity had ever known simply ceased to exist. The silence that followed was more profound than the vacuum of space itself. Across the assembled fleets, beings of dozens of species watched the empty platform where 12 forms had stood moments before. The quantum field dissipated, leaving nothing behind. No bodies, no atoms, no trace that the executed prisoners had ever existed. Aboard the human ships, grief and rage warred for dominance. Some crews wept openly, while others stood at their stations with white-knuckled fury. Children who had played with young Nethys friends pressed against viewports, trying to understand why their playmates were gone forever. Captain Chen's voice broke the silence with a transmission to the Galactic Council. You have murdered our friends and called it justice. You have destroyed our alliance and called it peace. History will judge which of us was truly civilized. High Arbitrator Zenthka's hologram began to fade as he prepared to end the transmission. The sentence has been carried out. All human vessels will withdraw to designated sectors. The Nethys population will be relocated according to the terms established by this council. This matter is concluded. But as the great fleets began to disperse and the execution platform powered down its terrible machinery, Dr. Elena Vasquez stared at her hidden quantum storage device with desperate hope. Somewhere in those encrypted patterns lay the complete biological information of 12 brave beings who had died for friendship. The technology to resurrect them did not yet exist. But humanity had always excelled at making the impossible possible. In the depths of space, scattered Nethys populations received the news with howls of grief that echoed across star systems. Their greatest leaders were gone, their alliance with humanity shattered and their future uncertain. But in hidden places, in quiet conversations, a different message began to spread. The humans had not abandoned them, even in defeat, even in mourning. The strange species that had first offered food to hungry predators was already planning for a future where justice might yet be served. The execution had ended lives, but it had not ended hope. As the last of the galactic fleets departed, leaving only the cold platform floating in the void, quantum signals began transmitting from human ships to hidden receivers throughout Nethys space. The messages were brief and coded, but their meaning was clear to those who knew how to listen. The dead would rise again, Somehow, someday, the galaxy's deadliest predator would return. 25 years had passed since the execution, and the galaxy had settled into what the Council called the New Peace. Human expansion had been contained through a series of restrictive treaties and constant surveillance. The surviving Nethys had been scattered to remote worlds, their populations carefully monitored to prevent any resurgence of their former military power. The alliance that had once threatened to reshape galactic politics was now just a cautionary tale told in diplomatic academies. Dr. Elena Vasquez had aged from a young physician into the galaxy's foremost expert on quantum biology. Her hair now silver and her face lined with decades of secret research, she stood in the hidden laboratory buried deep beneath the surface of Kepler 442b, surrounded by machinery that represented the pinnacle of human scientific achievement. The Quantum Resurrection Project had consumed her entire adult life. Funded by anonymous donations from human colonies and built in facilities that officially didn't exist. Final synchronization complete, announced Arya, the advanced AI that had helped design the resurrection protocols. All quantum patterns are stable and ready for reconstruction. Shall I begin the materialization sequence? Elena's hands trembled as she approached the primary control panel. After 25 years of theoretical work, failed experiments, and countless refinements, the technology finally existed to bring back those who had died for friendship. But the beings who would emerge from the quantum matrix would not be exactly the same as those who had been executed. "Wait," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Run the final diagnostic one more time. We only get one chance at this." The laboratory's holographic displays showed 12 containment chambers, each one calibrated to reconstruct a specific quantum pattern. But these patterns had been enhanced during the years of development. Working with scattered Nethys scientists who had secretly joined the project, Elena had identified ways to improve upon the original biological designs. The new bodies would be stronger, faster, and more resilient than their predecessors. Enhanced neural pathways would provide perfect memory and accelerated learning. Modified cellular structures would allow for rapid healing and extended lifespans. Most importantly, quantum entanglement anchors would prevent future disintegration attacks from working against them. All systems show green, Arya reported. Quantum coherence at maximum stability. Biological matrix chambers at optimal configuration. The subjects will emerge with all memories intact up to the moment of execution, plus enhanced capabilities derived from our research. Elena thought of Captain Sarah Chen, who had died 5 years earlier, still hoping to see her friends again. She thought of Admiral Webb, now retired but still working with the hidden resistance movement that had made this moment possible. Most of all, she thought of Carrick's and his final words about human ingenuity having no limits. "Begin resurrection sequence," she commanded. The laboratory filled with impossible light as quantum forces began assembling matter according to stored patterns. Energy cascaded through the containment chambers, reality bending as 12 forms slowly materialized. The process was beautiful and terrible, creation occurring at the speed of thought but visible in all its complexity. In the first chamber, Carrick's form began to take shape. His obsidian scales gleamed with new perfection, and his golden eyes showed depths of intelligence that hadn't existed before. The quantum enhancement process had not only restored him, but had elevated his consciousness to new levels. Vorthak emerged in the second chamber, his ancient scars now silvered threads against darker scales. The legendary commander looked exactly as he had at the moment of execution, but Elena's instruments registered biological improvements that made him faster and stronger than ever before. One by one, the other 10 Nethys materialized, each one a perfect reconstruction enhanced with 25 years of scientific advancement. As the energy fields dissipated, 12 pairs of golden eyes opened simultaneously, consciousness returning to beings who had been dead for a quarter century. "Where are we?" Carrick's voice was exactly the same, but Elena could hear new harmonics in it, subtle changes that spoke of enhanced neural processing. "You're on Kepler 442b, Elena replied, tears streaming down her face. "You've been dead for 25 years. We brought you back." The Nethys sat up slowly, their enhanced senses already adapting to their new environment. Vorthak's head turned toward Elena with predatory precision, but his eyes showed recognition and something like wonder. "Dr. Vasquez," the ancient commander rumbled, "you actually did it." The impossible resurrection we joked about in our final moments. Sarah Chen died believing you would return, Elena said, her voice thick with emotion. Admiral Webb spent his retirement planning for this day. Thousands of humans and Nethys worked in secret to make this possible. Carrick stood, and Elena was struck by how fluid his movements had become. The quantum enhancement had refined every aspect of his biology, making him more graceful and powerful than before. What has happened to our people? To the Alliance? Elena's expression darkened. The surviving Nethys were scattered to isolated worlds. Most human colonies are under constant surveillance. The Council maintains strict controls to prevent any resurgence of our friendship. They believe the threat is contained. But you continued the work anyway, Vorthak observed, flexing his hands and marveling at their improved responsiveness. Even under threat of punishment, humans chose to honor their friendships. Always, Elena replied firmly. And now you're more than what you were before. The enhancement process has given you capabilities that didn't exist 25 years ago. Faster reflexes, stronger bodies, enhanced minds, and immunity to quantum disintegration. The implications hit the resurrected Nethys immediately. They were no longer just the galaxy's deadliest predators. They had become something entirely new, something the Council's weapons couldn't destroy. The galaxy has changed, Elena continued, activating holographic displays that showed current political and military situations. The Council has grown more authoritarian, using fear of the old alliance to justify increased control over member species. Several civilizations have been forcibly relocated. Freedom of movement has been restricted. They've created the very tyranny they claim to be preventing. Carrick studied the displays with his enhanced intellect, processing vast amounts of information in seconds. They used our execution as justification for a galactic crackdown. Fear of our return has driven them to oppression. Fear that was well-founded, Vorthak added grimly, because we have indeed returned, and we are no longer bound by the limitations that allowed them to defeat us before. Elena activated another set of displays showing hidden human facilities throughout the galaxy. The resistance movement has been preparing for this day. We have ships, weapons, and most importantly, we have allies. Not all species supported the Council's actions. Many remember the peace and prosperity that existed during our alliance. What about our people? Asked one of the younger Nethys. The survivors who were scattered? They've been waiting, Elena replied with a slight smile. The quantum transmission networks you established before the execution were never fully discovered. Secret messages have been sent to every Nethys population in the galaxy. They know you're coming back. The 12 resurrected warriors exchanged glances, communicating through subtle expressions and gestures. Their enhanced minds were already formulating plans, calculating odds, and preparing for what was to come. The Council believes they achieved permanent peace through our deaths, Carrick said slowly. They have grown complacent in their victory. Their fleets are dispersed, their attention focused on maintaining control, rather than defending against threats they believe no longer exist. Then perhaps, Vorthak rumbled with predatory satisfaction, it is time to remind them that true predators are not so easily killed. Elena watched the 12 beings who had been returned from death itself, seeing in their enhanced forms the potential for either justice or revenge. The choice would be theirs, but she knew that whatever they decided, the galaxy would never again underestimate the power of friendship between humans and Nethys. There's something else, she said quietly. The enhancement process has created a quantum link between all of you. You can communicate instantaneously across any distance, share thoughts and sensations, coordinate actions perfectly. You're not just individuals anymore, you're something new. As if to demonstrate her words, the 12 Nethys suddenly moved in perfect synchronization, their heads turning toward the laboratory's exit with predatory alertness. Their enhanced senses had detected approaching ships, still days away but already within their expanded perception range. The Council has found us, Carrick said calmly. No, Elena replied with grim satisfaction. Those are our ships. Admiral Webb's successor is bringing you home. The galaxy's deadliest predators had returned from death itself, enhanced beyond their original capabilities and backed by the species that had never stopped believing in the power of friendship. The new peace was about to end and the real reckoning was just beginning. Christhane, where High Arbitrator Zenthka maintained his primary residence. The attack began not with ships or weapons, but with a simple transmission that appeared simultaneously on every communication network across the planet. "This is Carix of the Nethys. We have returned." The image that accompanied the words showed the executed predator standing on the bridge of a ship that shouldn't have existed. Behind him, 11 other figures that the galaxy had watched die 25 years earlier moved with fluid grace through what appeared to be an advanced command center. The technological sophistication visible in the background surpassed anything in current galactic databases. Panic spread through Christhane's population centers as the impossible became reality. Emergency sessions convened in government buildings while military commanders scrambled to organize defenses against an enemy they had believed permanently destroyed. But the Valeri forces found themselves fighting shadows, as the Nethys ships appeared and vanished like ghosts, always one step ahead of any response. Vorthak materialized aboard the orbital defense platform Eternal Vigilance through a teleportation technology that shouldn't have existed. The enhanced Nethys commander moved through the station's corridors like liquid death, his improved reflexes making him untouchable by conventional weapons. Security forces armed with the most advanced energy weapons in the galaxy found their shots passing harmlessly through empty air as Vorthak moved faster than their targeting systems could. "Your surrender is requested," he announced over the station's communication system, his voice echoing through every corridor. "Your cooperation will be remembered favorably when justice is finally served." The station commander, a veteran Volari named Kes-2, barricaded himself in the main control center and activated the quantum disintegration field that had been installed as a last resort against Nethys attacks. The same technology that had executed Carix and his companions should have instantly destroyed Vorthak, but the energy field passed through him like he wasn't there. "Impossible," Kes-2 whispered as Vorthak walked through the supposedly impenetrable barrier. "The disintegration field should have unmade you at the molecular level." "Death has taught us much about the nature of existence," Vorthak replied calmly. "Your weapons can no longer touch us because we are no longer bound by the same physical laws that govern normal matter." Within hours, every major military installation in the Christhane system had fallen to the 12 resurrected Nethys. But instead of the mass destruction that Volari history texts described from ancient Nethys raids, the attacks had been surgically precise. No civilians were harmed, no infrastructure was destroyed, and no planets were bombarded from orbit. The pattern repeated across dozens of star systems as news of the resurrection spread throughout the galaxy. Council worlds found their defenses overwhelmed by enemies who moved like living nightmares, immune to conventional weapons, and capable of coordinating their actions across impossible distances. Yet the attacks always followed the same pattern. Military targets neutralized, officials captured, civilians protected. Admiral Rebecca Torres, Elena Vasquez's daughter and successor to Admiral Webb's position, commanded the human fleet that had been waiting in secret for 25 years. From the bridge of the Dreadnought Redemption, she watched reports pour in from across the galaxy as the Nethys systematically dismantled the Council's military power. "Ma'am," reported Commander Singh from the tactical station, "we're receiving surrender requests from 47 Council worlds. Their defense networks are completely compromised. Carix's forces are offering safe passage to any species that withdraws from the Council alliance." Torres nodded grimly. The plan that had been developed during years of secret meetings was proceeding exactly as hoped. The enhanced Nethys weren't seeking conquest or revenge. They were offering choices that the Council had never given to others. On the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Friendship, Carix processed information from all 12 of his resurrected companions simultaneously. His enhanced consciousness allowed him to coordinate a galaxy-wide campaign while maintaining individual awareness of each engagement. The quantum link between the 12 made them more than the sum of their parts, a distributed intelligence capable of outthinking entire military organizations. "Vorthak, status report from the Alterian sectors," he commanded through their shared link. "6 major fleets have surrendered without firing a shot," came the immediate mental response. "The Alterian High Command is requesting negotiations. They claim they were pressured into supporting our execution and wish to rejoin the human alliance." Noted. "What about the Serpentine holdings? More resistance there, but their venom weapons are ineffective against our enhanced biology. 3 more hours should see their complete capitulation." Carix's tactical displays showed the galactic political map transforming in real time. Red markers indicating Council-controlled systems were rapidly turning blue as species, after species abandoned the alliance that had seemed so powerful just days before. The sight filled him with grim satisfaction, but also with sorrow for the necessity of such actions. A communication request appeared on his screen from an unexpected source. Dr. Elena Vasquez, transmitting from her hidden laboratory on Kepler 442b. Elena, Carrick's acknowledged as her aged face appeared on his view screen. Your resurrection process has exceeded all expectations. We are grateful beyond words. I didn't bring you back for conquest, Carricks, Elena said firmly. Please tell me you remember that. We remember everything, Carricks replied, including why we died. This is not conquest, Elena. This is justice. Every species that supported our execution is being given the same choice we were offered. Abandon their hostile alliance or face the consequences. And those consequences are? Carricks's expression softened. Military defeat and political isolation. Nothing more. We learned from humanity that true strength comes from mercy, not from cruelty. No civilian populations are being harmed. No worlds are being destroyed. We are simply removing the Council's ability to enforce their oppression. On her screen, Elena could see the tactical displays showing the systematic collapse of Council power, but she also noticed something else. Scattered Nethys populations throughout the galaxy were beginning to move, no longer scattered and isolated, but coordinating their actions through the same quantum networks that linked the 12 resurrected leaders. How many of our people are joining the movement? She asked. All of them, Carricks replied with quiet pride. 25 years of separation have only strengthened their loyalty to the Alliance. They remember what it was like to have human friends, to build something together, instead of simply taking from others. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent transmission from the Galactic Council's emergency session. High Arbitrator Zenthka's crystalline form appeared on every major communication network, his usual composure replaced by obvious desperation. Citizens of the galaxy, the ancient Volari announced, we face an unprecedented crisis. The criminals we executed 25 years ago have somehow returned from death itself. They command impossible technologies and have demonstrated immunity to our most powerful weapons. This threatens the very foundation of civilized space. Carrick smiled grimly as he listened to the broadcast. And now comes the predictable response. Blame the victims and call for even greater oppression. Zenthka continued his address. All species are hereby commanded to mobilize their full military resources against this threat. Emergency powers are activated. Any world that negotiates with or surrenders to these monsters will be considered in rebellion against galactic law. Interesting, Vorthak's voice came through the quantum link. He's making the same mistake many of our prey used to make, escalating when surrender would be wiser. What are your orders? Asked another of the 12. Carricks considered for a moment, processing tactical data from across the galaxy. The Council's emergency mobilization would bring together the largest military force in galactic history, but it would also concentrate their power in predictable locations. More importantly, it would force every species to choose sides openly. Continue with the original plan, he decided. Offer one final opportunity for peaceful resolution. Any species that abandons the Council alliance will be welcomed as friends. Those that choose to fight will face the consequences of their decision. He opened a galaxy-wide transmission, his image appearing on communication networks from the galactic core to the outer rim territories. People of the galaxy, Carricks began, his enhanced voice carrying across space with perfect clarity. We did not choose to return from death to become conquerors. We came back because the galaxy needs to remember what genuine peace looks like. For 25 years, you have lived under the Council's interpretation of order, fear-based, oppressive, and ultimately destructive to the very civilizations it claimed to protect. The transmission showed images of Council policies, forced relocations, restricted trade, military occupations of peaceful worlds, and the systematic dismantling of interspecies friendships. We offer you the same choice our human friends offered us 3 decades ago, the chance to build something better together. Any species willing to reject the Council's authority and embrace genuine cooperation will find us ready partners. Those don't. The Andromeda Gateway, a massive space station built specifically for the gathering, Representatives from over 400 species filled the station's Great Hall, many meeting face-to-face for the first time in decades. The diversity was staggering. Crystalline Valari refugees who had fled their homeworld's destruction, gaseous nebulans floating in environmental suits, silicon-based Rockin delegations, and dozens of other species that had chosen freedom over council oppression. Admiral Rebecca Torres stood at the central podium, her weathered uniform bearing insignia from both human and Nethys military traditions. Behind her, holographic displays showed the current state of the galaxy. Vast swaths of space now governed by the growing alliance, while the remaining council forces had retreated to heavily fortified core worlds. 6 months ago, Torres began, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast hall. Most of you lived under a system that demanded conformity through fear. Today, we gather to build something our predecessors could only dream of, a truly unified galaxy based on mutual respect and genuine cooperation. In the front row, Carrix listened with satisfaction as Torres outlined the principles of the new alliance. The enhanced Nethys had spent months traveling between worlds, not as conquerors but as mediators, helping former enemies find common ground. Their unique combination of fearsome reputation and demonstrated restraint had proven remarkably effective at ending conflicts that had raged for centuries. The new galactic alliance operates on simple principles, Torres continued. Self-determination for all species, free trade and movement between member worlds, mutual defense against external threats, and respect for cultural diversity. No species will be forced to conform to another's values, but all will be expected to respect others' right to exist and thrive. The Alterian elder who had once accused humanity of controlling the Nethys now stood to address the assembly. His 6 eyes showed the weariness of his great age, but also something new: hope. I speak for the Alterian Confederation when I say that we were wrong to fear the human-Nethys alliance, he admitted publicly. We allowed our prejudices to blind us to the truth, that friendship between different species can create strength rather than weakness. The humans have proven that diversity is not something to be suppressed, but something to be celebrated. A ripple of agreement passed through the assembly as species after species offered similar testimonials. The Zephyrian representative, whose tentacles had once writhed with terror at the sight of Nethys warriors, now spoke of joint colonies where her people worked alongside former predators to terraform new worlds. The Crystalline Collective shared stories of Nethys defenders who had protected their fragile forms from raiders, asking nothing in return but friendship. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now elderly but still brilliant, presented her latest research to the assembled delegates. Her holographic displays showed the quantum enhancement technology that had resurrected the 12 Nethys leaders, but with a crucial difference: the process had been adapted to work on any species. Death need no longer be permanent, she announced to gasps of amazement from the audience. The quantum resurrection process can be applied to any biological form. We are prepared to share this technology freely with all Alliance members, ensuring that no species need fear extinction again. The implications were staggering. Endangered species could be preserved indefinitely. Beings lost to accidents or violence could be returned. The very nature of existence was being transformed by the alliance between humanity and its allies. But not everyone was celebrating. On the fortified world of Nexus Prime, the remaining council leadership watched the Unity Conference with growing desperation. High Arbitrator Zenthka's crystalline form flickered between colors of rage and fear as he addressed the emergency session. 400 species have abandoned their oaths to galactic law, he declared to the assembled hardliners. They follow criminals and madmen who promise impossible technologies and unrealistic cooperation between natural enemies. This cannot be allowed to continue. The serpentine Admiral Siskara coiled her massive form around the chamber's speaking platform. Our fleets may be outnumbered, but we still possess the ultimate weapon. If we cannot restore order through conventional means, we must consider more drastic measures. She activated a holographic display showing a massive device hidden in the galactic core, the reality anchor, a weapon designed to prevent any form of quantum manipulation across vast regions of space. Its activation would make resurrection technology impossible, trap enhanced beings in their current forms, and potentially unravel the quantum foundations that held the galaxy's advanced civilizations together. The cost would be enormous. warned the automated collective's representative. Billions of beings depend on quantum technology for survival. Medical systems, transportation networks, communication arrays, all would fail. Better to rule over ruins than serve under rebels. Zenthka replied coldly. Activate the reality anchor. If we cannot have our galaxy, then no one can have theirs. The order went out through encrypted channels to the core worlds, but the transmission was intercepted by the quantum-linked Nethys network. Within seconds, Carrick and his companions knew of the Council's final desperate plan. Vorthak, Carrick called through their shared consciousness. How quickly can you reach the galactic core? Alone, perhaps 3 days using our enhanced ships, came the mental reply. But the reality anchor is protected by the Council's most powerful fleet. A direct assault would be suicidal. Then we don't assault it directly, Carrick decided. We convince its protectors to stand down. The 12 enhanced Nethys split up for the first time since their resurrection, each taking command of the Alliance's fastest ships and heading toward different sectors of the galaxy. Their mission was not conquest but conversion, reaching out to Council forces that had not yet committed to the final battle. Carrick's own ship, the Eternal Friendship, transmitted a message to every vessel in the Council's core fleet. This is Carrick of the Nethys. Your leaders plan to activate a weapon that will destroy the quantum foundations of galactic civilization. Billions will die to preserve their failing grip on power. You have one final chance to choose between tyranny and freedom. The response came from an unexpected source. Captain Thex 9 of the automated collective cruiser Logic's Edge. The artificial being's mechanical voice carried across space with crystalline clarity. Carrick of the Nethys, this unit has reviewed the reality anchor's specifications. Its activation will indeed cause massive casualties among both organic and artificial life forms. This unit cannot logically support such an action. One by one, ships in the Council fleet began switching sides. The crews had spent months watching their government's increasingly desperate attempts to maintain control, and many had begun questioning orders that seemed designed more to preserve political power than to protect civilian populations. Within hours, the massive Council fleet protecting the reality anchor had been reduced to less than 100 vessels, mostly crewed by fanatics who would rather see the galaxy burn than admit they had been wrong. High Arbitrator. Zenthka's final transmission came from the weapon platform itself. If this galaxy will not accept proper order, then it deserves to return to chaos. Initiating reality anchor activation sequence. The weapon began to charge, reality rippling around it as quantum forces built to critical levels. But before it could reach full power, 12 figures materialized on the platform simultaneously. The enhanced Nethys had used their quantum abilities to bypass every defense. Appearing directly at the weapon's core, Carrick found Zenthka in the control chamber, the ancient Volari's crystalline form pulsing with manic energy as he attempted to complete the activation sequence. You're too late, the arbitrator declared. The process cannot be stopped. You're right, Carrick replied calmly. But it can be redirected. Working together with perfect coordination, the 12 Nethys began altering the reality anchor's configuration. Instead of destabilizing quantum forces throughout the galaxy, they turned it into a massive quantum resonance amplifier. The energy that would have destroyed advanced civilization instead spread outward as a wave of pure possibility. Across the galaxy, the quantum enhancement process that had been limited to the 12 resurrected Nethys suddenly became available to any being that chose to accept it. Species that had never dreamed of such abilities found themselves capable of feats that bordered on the miraculous. The boundary between life and death became permeable, allowing consciousness to persist even through physical destruction. Most importantly, the enhancement wave carried a message of unity and understanding that transcended language barriers. For the first time in galactic history, every intelligent being could directly experience what it was like to be a member of another species. Empathy became not just an ideal but a tangible reality. Zenthka watched in horror as his ultimate weapon became the instrument of the very unity he had sought to prevent. "What have you done?" he whispered. "What humans taught us to do," Carrick replied gently. "We turned a tool of destruction into a gift of understanding. As the reality anchor's energy dissipated, leaving behind a galaxy forever changed, the remaining Council forces found themselves facing a choice. They could continue fighting or 5 years after the Unity War, 100 different species played together in the gardens of New Harmony Station, their laughter echoing through the massive biodome that served as the capital of the Galactic Alliance. The station itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering, with architectural elements from every member species blended into a structure that celebrated diversity while maintaining perfect functionality. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now in her 90s but kept vital by the enhancement technology she had helped develop, watched from her garden balcony as young humans chased Nethys hatchlings through the crystalline flower beds, while Alterian children floated overhead in their environmental suits. The sight filled her with profound satisfaction. This was what Sarah Chen had dreamed of when she first offered food to hungry predators decades ago. "Grandmother Elena," called a small voice from below. A young Nethys named Kess, named after the Valeri, commander who had eventually become one of the Alliance's strongest supporters, bounded up the path with the enhanced agility that all post-wave children possessed. "Carix is here for your appointment." Elena smiled as she made her way to the garden's main pavilion where Carix waited with his usual patience. The enhanced Nethys leader had changed little in 5 years, his quantum-anchored biology keeping him in perfect physical condition, but his golden eyes showed depths of experience that spoke of the enormous responsibilities he had taken on. "Elena," he greeted her warmly, rising from the crystalline bench where he had been reading reports on his quantum display. "How are you feeling today?" "Old but grateful," she replied, settling beside him with the careful movements of advanced age. "Every morning I wake up amazed that we actually succeeded. Sometimes I look at all this," she gestured toward the thriving station around them, "and I can hardly believe it's real." "Real and growing stronger every day," Carix confirmed. "The latest census shows we now have 847 member species. 3 more systems joined the Alliance just this week, including some from the former Council territories. The transformation had been more complete than anyone had dared hope. The Unity Wave had not only enhanced individual capabilities, but had created a permanent quantum link between all willing participants. Conflicts still arose between different species and cultures, but they were resolved through empathic understanding, rather than violence. When beings could literally experience life from their opponents' perspectives, compromise became not just possible but inevitable. "What about the holdouts?" Elena asked, though she already suspected the answer from Carix's expression. "Down to just 37 isolated systems," he reported. "Most are single-world dictatorships or extremely xenophobic cultures that have chosen complete isolation over cooperation. We respect their choice and maintain protective barriers around their territories to ensure no one disturbs them. It was perhaps the Alliance's greatest achievement that they had learned to accept even rejection gracefully. Species that wanted no part of galactic civilization were free to maintain their isolation, protected by the same forces that defended Alliance members. No one was forced to join, and no one was punished for choosing solitude." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Admiral Rebecca Torres, now in her 50s and bearing the insignia of the Alliance Fleet Command. She approached with the measured pace of someone carrying important news. "Carix, Elena," she greeted them both. "I thought you'd want to hear this personally. We've received a transmission from the Outer Galactic Rim. It's from the survey ship Distant Hope." Elena's eyes widened. The Distant Hope had been sent beyond the galaxy's edge 5 years ago, seeking contact with civilizations in nearby galaxies. The fact that they were reporting back could only mean one thing. "They've made contact?" Carix asked, his enhanced senses already detecting the excitement in Torres's emotional resonance. "More than that," Torres replied, activating her portable holographic display. "They've encountered a galaxy-spanning civilization that has been watching our development for centuries. And Elena, you're going to find this particularly interesting. They're requesting permission to visit specifically because of the resurrection technology." The hologram showed images transmitted from thousands of light years away. Vast cities floating in space, beings of energy and matter combined, and most remarkably, what appeared to be a thriving civilization of species that had achieved immortality through methods similar to but far more advanced than Elena's quantum resurrection process. "They call themselves the Eternal Collective," Torres continued. "According to their messages, they've been waiting for our galaxy to develop similar technologies because they Believe true galactic unity is only possible when death is no longer a barrier to understanding. Elena felt tears forming in her eyes as she realized the implications. The human impulse to help, to offer friendship even to the most feared predators in the galaxy, had ultimately led to contact with beings who had solved the greatest challenges facing any civilization. There's more, Torres added. They've invited us to send a delegation to their galaxy for cultural exchange. They want to learn about our alliance model, and they're offering to share technologies that could help us explore not just other galaxies, but other dimensions of existence. Carix stood slowly, his enhanced mind already processing the vast implications of contact with such an advanced civilization. After everything we've been through, from execution to resurrection to unity, we now stand at the threshold of something even greater. Will you go? Helena asked, though she already knew the answer. Not alone, Carix replied firmly. This is too important for any one species or individual to handle. We'll send representatives from across the Alliance, humans, Nethys, Volari, Alterians, everyone who wants to participate. As if summoned by their conversation, Vorthak materialized nearby using the quantum teleportation technology that had become commonplace since the Unity Wave. The ancient commander looked as powerful as ever, but his expression carried the wisdom of someone who had seen the galaxy transform from a place of fear and division into something approaching paradise. Old friend, he greeted Carix. I overheard the news about the Eternal Collective. The scattered Nethys populations are already volunteering for the expedition. After decades of being feared throughout this galaxy, they're eager to meet beings who might understand what it's like to be misunderstood. Elena laughed, a sound full of wonder and joy. Do you realize what this means? We started with one human captain offering food to hungry predators, and now we're being invited to join a galactic community that spans multiple galaxies. It means, Carrick said thoughtfully, that the lesson Sarah Chen taught us was more profound than any of us realized. Kindness, friendship, and the willingness to see others as potential allies rather than inevitable enemies. These aren't just nice ideals. They're fundamental forces that shape the universe itself. As the three friends continued their conversation, children from dozens of species continued playing in the gardens below. Human children taught Nethys hatchlings to appreciate poetry, while young Volari showed their playmates how to create music from crystalline resonance. The site represented everything the Alliance had achieved, a future where differences were celebrated rather than feared. You know, Elena said quietly, I sometimes wonder what would have happened if the Council had chosen differently. If they had embraced the Alliance instead of fearing it. They would have been welcome, Carix replied without hesitation. The offer of friendship was always genuine. But perhaps things happened the way they needed to. Our struggle taught us that unity isn't just about agreeing with each other, it's about choosing to work together even when we disagree. The news of contact, with the Eternal Collective spread throughout the Alliance within hours, carried by the quantum communication networks that linked every member world. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of species volunteering to participate in the expedition, offers of resources and technology, and most importantly, expressions of hope for what this new friendship might bring. But perhaps the most touching response came from the isolated systems that had rejected Alliance membership. Several sent messages congratulating the Alliance on their achievement and expressing cautious interest in learning more about these new galactic neighbors. It seemed that even the most xenophobic cultures could be inspired by the possibility of contact with truly alien civilizations. As Elena made her way back to her quarters that evening, she paused at the memorial garden dedicated to those who had made the Alliance possible. Sarah Chen's name was inscribed in crystalline letters that caught and reflected light from dozens of different stars, surrounded by similar memorials to humans, Nethys, and members of other species who had given their lives for the dream of galactic unity. Thank you, she whispered to the memorial, her voice carrying across the quantum resonance field that connected all Alliance members. Throughout the galaxy, beings paused in their activities as they felt the emotional resonance of her gratitude, understanding without words the debt they all owed to those who had chosen friendship over fear. The galaxy's deadliest predator had indeed come back from execution, but not as an instrument of revenge. Instead, Carix and his companions had returned as